When Shrek the Third hit theaters, the world was hungry for more ogre action. But while the consoles got clunky 3D platformers, something special happened on our phones. The French publisher Gameloft, the asphalt guys stepped up to the plate. They didn't just port a console game poorly, they built a brand new 2D side-scroller specifically for Java-enabled devices. This is the story of Shrek the Third on mobile, a game that was basically Super Mario Bros. And Sonic the Hedgehog. Gameloft had a deal with DreamWorks to release this game across 170 operators in 75 countries. That meant if you had a phone in your pocket in 2007, chances were high you could play this. The plot follows the movie closely enough. Prince Charming has staged a coup in Far, Far Away, and Shrek is on a quest to find the rightful heir. But let's be honest, nobody played a Java game for the story. You played it for the gameplay, and this is where things get interesting. The level design is surprisingly non-linear for a mobile title. You'll explore the docks, the streets of Far, Far Away, and spooky castles. There are hidden walls to break and secret locations to unlock. If you saw a suspicious wall, you knew you had to bash through it to find the bonus items. The combat is simple. You stun enemies by slamming the ground, then you jump on them. It is very Mario, but the animation is charming. When you defeat a guard, their armor explodes off their body, and they run away in their underwear. For a game with only a few kilobytes of memory, that is a fantastic detail. Just like the console versions, Gameloft knew you'd get bored of just jumping. They threw in a genre shift. About halfway through, you switch to controlling Dragon. Suddenly, the 2D platformer becomes a horizontal shoot-'em-up. Critics at the time noted that the medium difficulty holds your hand a bit too much. Donkey pops up with text prompts telling you exactly which button to press to solve a puzzle. It makes the game incredibly accessible. You can beat the whole thing in under 2 hours. There are small touches, like birds sitting on the ground that fly away when Shrek stomps past them. The game didn't just rely on the movie license, it relied on good game design. Puss in Boots shows up for the boss fights, and Donkey acts as your tutorial guide. It feels like a love letter to the era of 16-bit platformers, just compressed into a JAR file. Developed and published by THQ Wireless, this title wasn't just a cheap cash-in. It was a global launch, hitting Java-powered handsets in November 2008. But let's be clear about the timeline. This isn't the 2002 Clone Wars game you played on a GameCube. This is strictly based on the 2003 animated micro-series and the 2008 CGI film that introduced us to Ahsoka Tano. You don't play as a Jedi here. You play as the boots on the ground, a clone trooper squad leader. Your mission is hunt down the Separatist Army's secret weapon. We're talking 15 action-packed missions spanning 3 distinct planets. You'd traverse climbable walls, crawl through dank bunkers, and navigate twisting caverns. And the game respected the lore. It wasn't just faceless droids. You were taking orders from holograms of Obi-Wan Kenobi, getting intel from Captain Rex, and running into the terrifying 4-armed General Grievous. For a mobile game, it felt like you were part of the actual television series, not just a spin-off. Mechanically, this was a squad-based strategy game mixed with action. You controlled your trooper, but you had to manage your squad to survive. The enemy variety was impressive for the hardware. Faced 4 distinct types of Separatist droids, each requiring a different tactic. You couldn't just run and gun, you had to use the terrain. And let's talk about the difficulty. Mobile games in 2008 didn't hold your hand. With limited lives and clunky feature phone controls usually mapped to the center 5 key for shooting, every victory felt earned. One wrong move into a tunnel, and your squad was wiped out by a tactical droid ambush. This game launched alongside the massive LucasArts console version for the Wii and DS, and the DVD debut of the Clone Wars film. This was a transmedia blitz. If you were a kid in a grocery store line in 2009, bored out of your mind, this $4.99 download was your escape to a galaxy. When you think of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, you probably picture Ezio Auditore galloping through the sun-drenched streets of Rome, recruiting apprentices, and destroying Borgia Towers in full 3D. But in 2010, if you didn't own a PlayStation or an Xbox, your only way to don the hidden blade was through a much smaller screen. Developed and published by Gameloft, the mobile version was released alongside the main game in late 2010. This is not an open-world game. Instead of the sprawling 3D environment of Rome, the Mobile Brotherhood is a 2D platformer. However, don't let the side-scrolling perspective fool you. Gameloft managed to blend stealth, combat, and acrobatics into a vertical experience. You aren't just running left to right, you are climbing scaffolding, leaping between rooftops, and utilizing a grappling hook, a tool that didn't exist in the console version. The story starts similarly to the console game. Following the events of Assassin's Creed II, Ezio returns to Monteregione with the Apple of Eden. But when Cesare Borgia attacks and kills his uncle Mario, the plot diverges significantly. In the console version, Ezio wants to liberate Rome. The narrative becomes a relentless chase for the Apple of Eden, but the journey takes Ezio to more than just Rome. You will travel through Florence, Venice, and Rome almost equally. This is a much more violent, merciless Ezio. He doesn't spare his enemies. You also get to fight the followers of Romulus in the Colosseum early on, and you even use Leonardo's flying machine in a side-scrolling shooter segment to blow up the Borgia fleet. It's ridiculous, it's fast-paced, and it feels like a comic book adaptation of the main story. Surprisingly well for a 2000s mobile game. Ezio has his standard hidden blade, sword, and throwing knives. But his most useful gadget is the grappling hook, which allows him to zip line across gaps or ascend vertical walls instantly. The combat is timing-based. You have a block button and an attack button, but you can also perform finishing moves. Let's rewind to February 2010. The iPhone was still finding its feet, and mobile gaming meant polyphonic ringtones and Snake. But Namco released Tekken Mobile in Europe, later renaming it Tekken Resolute for the US market. It wasn't 3D. To run on Java-enabled feature phones, Namco ditched the polygons for beautiful, hand-drawn 2D sprites based on Tekken 6 designs. It looked like a high-end Game Boy Advance game, and it ran buttery smooth. You started with only Jin and Xiaoyu, having to unlock the other 6 heavy hitters like Paul Phoenix and Yoshimitsu. But here is the stat that blew my mind while researching this. Game had Bluetooth multiplayer. In 2010, wireless latency was a nightmare, but Tekken Resolute let you link up with a friend wirelessly to settle a score. For a Java game, that was sorcery. Beyond the arcade mode, it featured a Tekken Force side-scrolling beat-em-up mode. You walked sideways, beat up generic enemies, and collected coins. It was simple, grindy, but added the replayability the base 2D fighter needed. Fast forward 8 years. The smartphone revolution is over, and mobile gaming is dominated by live service models. In March 2018, Bandai Namco launched a new Tekken Mobile on iOS and Android. For many fans in regions where consoles were expensive, this pixelated brawler was their first introduction to Kazuya, Jin, and Paul Phoenix. You could sit across from a friend in a school cafeteria, link up your phones wirelessly, and have a lag-free, competitive Tekken match. It wasn't just a novelty, it was the closest thing to a portable console experience you could get without a PSP. For a Java game to support real-time versus fighting over Bluetooth was a technical marvel. The roster featured 8 iconic fighters. You started with Jin Kazama and Ling Xiaoyu, and had to unlock the rest, including fan favorites like Martial Law, Paul Phoenix, Nina Williams, and even the boxer Steve Fox. The content didn't stop at versus battles. The game packed in several modes. You had the standard arcade and story modes, which explained the motivations of the fighters. However, the crown jewel was Tekken Force mode. Unlocked after beating arcade mode once, Tekken Force transformed the game into a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you fought through enemy-filled stage. This added huge replay value to a game that was only a few megabytes in size.